Hey, welcome to another episode of Coffee HEMA with me, Jamie McKeever. I'm going to take a slight step to the left today. Continuing on talking about kind of tournament systems and organising tournaments. I've mostly been talking about scoring so far, and particularly on kind of how you differentiate between doubles and afterblows and that kind of stuff. I've still got some stuff to say about that one, but I want to talk about a slightly different topic for a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 videos, because of some things I've seen. Really, I'm going to talk today and the next couple of videos about sort of different ways of cutting up your judges and their responsibilities. And the reason for that is that I've seen a lot of discussion recently on Albion Cup footage about people being confused, sort of why the judges are talking to each other, why the judges are talking to the fencers. I'm not going to talk about that in this video. I'll talk about that in the next video. But I think people often don't realise that, you know, not as well as rules being different, the way that judges interact with the fencers and what their roles and responsibilities are varies quite a bit between different systems, and leads to quite a different experience from the fencers for a variety of reasons. And for this video, I want to shamelessly steal from my friend Jon Middleton. This is his framework, not mine, but I use it. I think it's very good. It was a way of thinking about sort of the 2 main roles that a judge has, or your judging team has collectively. And then these 2 roles are able to be used to understand like why you would cut up a judging responsibilities in a particular way and what everybody's involved in. So these 2 roles, you know, the judging, they're responsible for basically 2 things. And again, in Jon's words, these are justice and order, very grandly named. I'll start with order first, right? Order is about making sure that things happen, right? That's about making sure that, you know, people are on their piste, that they are fencing, that they are stopping at the right moments, that they're doing it safely, that everybody knows where they're supposed to be going. And when I say judging team here, you know, I'm including people at the table staff who are getting them on piste, as well as, you know, the head judge who's calling the starts and ends positions of a fight, or anything else that the side judges might be doing, right? Order is quite important. And actually, if we don't have order, we don't have justice. I'm making a comment about fencing tournaments, not about life. Just to be clear, this is not a big political statement I'm making here. But it's impossible to kind of sift through everything and work out what should happen if you haven't got people, you know, coming on, actually fencing when they're supposed to, doing it safely, and like everybody just being in the right position at the right time. Things that help. No, I'll come back to that in a second. So then, what's justice, right? Justice then is about making sure that the outcome of the match is an accurate reflection of what it should have been, right? That the better fencer won, with whatever definition you also happens to be. HEMA judges are often quite bad at both, right? And often quite good at both, I should be clear. You know, it's not like it's fun to rag on judges and everybody does it, but there are plenty of excellent judges out there. But they are different errors that happen in kind of different circumstances. So kind of order issues, and again, if we count table as part of the judging team, you know, lots of minor ones are things like people not being there on time, or people not knowing, even, you know, the defenses might not know that they're on next, right? Making sure that they are aware that, hey, you're about to fence, get ready. Or you're expected to be fencing right now. Other major order issues that happen are people, and this is particularly head judges, simply not being loud enough, right? You know, there's a lot of noise going on in the fencing hall, and a lot of judging calls coming from different people. So your judge needs to be loud enough that you can hear, of course, everything else. And of course, you're pumped full of adrenaline and you're wearing a fencing mask, which doesn't help either. But the other kind of major order issues that you see a lot of the times are judges not being consistent about when and how and where to apply penalties. That's both, you know, stopping dangerous stuff, or maybe, you know, not quite yet dangerous, but getting towards that. Like, how does the judge handle those conversations? How does the judge work through with that? Do they have a system for penalizing? Do they have a system for having a conversation with the fencer to de-escalate? You know, I'll talk about that later. Not this video, in a later video. But a lot of the time, you know, judges are not very good at any of those things. And I will say this, you know, in their defense, it is very difficult to distinguish sometimes between an energetic and enthusiastic exchange between 2 skilled fencers and 2 people going way, way, way too hard. And, you know, people do make errors. People tend to make errors as in one direction, not always, but in one direction, in the sense of the same judge will either be consistently allowing things that shouldn't have been allowed, or disallowing things that should have been allowed, right? You don't tend to have people who are fluctuating too much on either side. But there's not a lot of talk about calibrating that in judging briefings, so that's one of the faults on organisers to some extent, that different judges will have different subjective views about where that line should be. In the justice regard, I think it's probably where judging complaints are more common, but hits are hard to see. And different rule sets, as I've been talking about, may make certain abilities to judge correctly even harder. I will talk later about, again, a different video on kind of differential scoring and like different score targets and how that affects judges. But there's a lot of stuff going on, and making sure that the judge has, depending on what they've got to keep track of, they have seen the action, seen the strike, where it struck, the order that it was, compared to the order of the other person, plus any non-fencing non-blade actions that happened in terms of footwork or whatever that might be relevant for judging tempo or priority or whatever you've got. There's a good 6 or 7 things that each judge has to keep track of in order to come up with an accurate opinion about the score, depending on the scoring system. And of course, there's 2 fences involved, and you've got to keep track of it for both of them, and your eyes physically cannot do that, right? Which is why we normally have more than one judge. That's before I've got into the issue of fences getting in the way. A perfectly clear action, but the fence's body is in the way, you can't see it, right? So I think that's enough for today, right? I'm going to talk a bit more about some decisions you can make about how you set up your judging teams that will have an impact. It's important to keep this kind of justice in order idea in mind, because some of them will improve order, some of them will improve justice, and sometimes you have judging responsibilities split across the two. But it's good thinking about both of them, I think, because, as I say, there were different errors and different solutions for those errors depending on which one you're concerned about. Thanks for watching.